Thanks for joining today's episode of Small Talks for Big Change, where we help simplify financial topics to help with your financial wellness. My name is Michelle Enriquez, Membership Development Manager here at Patelco Credit Union, and today we're back to talk fraud. And of our inaugural podcast season and 10 episodes in, we've chatted fraud now twice, and we're back for a third episode because, frankly, fraud is wild, folks. And joining us today is Tiffany Kiefer, principal of our fraud program in our fraud division, but also a fellow Patelco slow pitch softball player. Hey, Tiffany, great to have you on today.
Thanks for having me, Michelle.
So, Tiffany, you're an awesome softball player, gotta say. And I kind of see your role here at Patelco much like a pitcher leading the way in this fraud game.
Oh, yes, Michelle. Thank you for that fantastic softball plug.
Tell us a little bit about your background and your role here at Patelco as our fraud program principal.
I'm very happy to do so. So I had the pleasure of joining Patelco in December of 2022. I have been working in fraud for the financial industry for about 15 years now. I am a certified fraud examiner, and I have my master's degree in fraud and forensics. I was thrilled to join the team knowing what Patelco does for our membership, does for our community. And so, of course, I jumped for that opportunity. What I do here at Patelco as the principal fraud program partner is I work with the fraud team, really working on processes of how we can help our members, make sure we are efficiently preventing fraud, and as well as working with our team members and how they work and help with our members to really step back and look at that member experience when it comes to fraud. How can we better educate? How can we provide tools and processes for our team members to assist our members? And so it's something that I really love. I have a complete and total passion for educating individuals in how to step back and to identify fraud and to prevent it from negatively impacting their lives.
All right, so new Federal Trade Commission data as of February of this year reports consumers losing $8.8 billion to scams in 2022. That's worth repeating, $8.8 billion to scams last year, and that's more than 30% over 2021. So it's serious. And from what we've seen here at Patelco this year so far, this seems to be continuing to grow. So Tiffany, what new trends are you seeing? How are these scams evolving?
Fraud is growing, and it has been steadily over time as techniques develop out by these fraudsters. And so what we're seeing recently are investment scams involving social media, as well as romance scams continue with evolving methods of how the fraudsters perform those. They do continue, but they morph over time in how they portray themselves, right? And so we've recently have had a member report falling victim to an investment scam on LinkedIn, where a fraudster reached out to the member offering a fantastic investment opportunity. So this member asked the questions, trying to vet out this person, thinking that they were asking the correct questions, but these fraudsters are good. They're savvy. They prepare their information. They prepare documents. This fraudster had a video of her meeting potential clients. And so this member was under the impression that this was a legitimate opportunity and sent out a very large dollar wire. Unfortunately, when that wire went out, there's no recourse to pull those funds back due to the scam. And so you have to be very careful when you engage with individuals, especially when it comes to investments.
Yeah, we haven't talked about LinkedIn. We've talked about social media channels, and you think LinkedIn is a professional social media outlet and that might happen there. So that's a first, because we've chatted on the show romance scams and Facebook and other social media platforms, but not LinkedIn. And specifically, fraudsters, they're taking on these personas to connect emotionally.
Anytime you ask a question, they try to think out what you're going to ask them so that they can come up with a story or a source or a document, something to convince you that they are real, because that's their job. It's a confidence game. And that's what they did with this member. And so this member was convinced to send out a very large dollar wire. And unfortunately, because of how the funds are sent out, there's no recourse to pull those funds back.
We know that to try and, in their attempts to take advantage of people. We've talked elder abuse and manipulating seniors who may be less tech savvy and vulnerable. We've talked about job scams with younger people and manipulating those eager to get a job. There's so many types to cover, right? But there's a common theme between all of this, and that's that these crooks, they take on an imposter persona. I read an NPR article recently about imposter scams, and they had described these scammers as psychologists in the wild, and I had never heard a more accurate description of what this is. And these scams are highly sophisticated now. They're using new technology like caller ID spoofing and voice cloning. Can you tell us a little bit more about this spoofing and how we stay resilient specific to voice calls?
Spoofing is the technique where a fraudster will impersonate a trusted source, such as your credit union, right? Just because your caller ID tells you that it's somebody else on the other end of the line, that does not mean that it's always so. There is technology out there where anybody can impersonate a phone number. Years ago, these fraudsters were focusing on contacting individuals, victims, as though they were the IRS. And so we were getting the IRS calls. That morphed into this Social Security Administration. And recently, I've been hearing about utility companies, PG&E, and really the big trend right now, these fraudsters are impersonating financial institutions. So what these fraudsters will do, they will spoof Patelco's phone number by sending out voice calls to you. And so when you go to pick up that phone, it will show up on your caller ID as Patelco, even though it's not, right? And so for us to have those words flash on the phone, we're under the impression that this is our trusted source. This is my financial institution. This is someone who's going to help me. And so we're in that mindset when we answer that call, right? And so when these fraudsters engage with us, when we answer the call thinking that this is Patelco, they will use that to their advantage, where we will tend to have that natural inclination to provide information to Patelco. Patelco's asking me this. Patelco needs information from me in order to help me. And so that's when we give up that information, right? And so that's really the technique of these financial institution imposters. And this is not just specific to Patelco. This is happening widespread. This is all over the country. These fraudsters will go from one financial institution to the other. And so this is not just a Patelco thing. This is an every financial institution thing.
Yeah, so I've almost resorted to not picking up the phone. It gets to be so many and just replying to any voice messages that I get, but I shouldn't have to do that. Right?
I know. So, I think you're right.
If I'm picking up the phone, how do I vet who I'm engaging with? So this spoofing is happening. The number is the same number that I would normally recognize when Patelco does call or when someone does call me. Are there questions I can ask? How do I properly vet who I'm engaging with on the phone?
So what you can do when you're getting this phone call and you answer it and somebody tells you that they're calling you on behalf of Patelco, for this trend that we're seeing, these fraudsters are calling people and saying that they have fraud on their card. That's usually why they're reaching out to you. They may or may not know your card number. They may or may not know your specific details or information, where you live, your account information. And so you receive this call in from this individual. Do not provide information to them. You want to know what information they have as they're calling out to you. Legitimate phone calls that come from Patelco's card fraud team. They will ask you if you have performed activity in a certain location for whatever amount. If it's valid, they say thank you and they end the call. Okay. If it's not valid, they will tell you, okay, this is fraud. We're going to have to shut down your card, replace it. And if the transaction does go through, a card dispute's going to have to be filed. They will not ask you for your online banking information. They will not ask you for your verbal password or your online banking password. And so what these fraudsters are doing, they are intimidating members into providing personal information by saying, I cannot shut this card down until you give me this personal information. You will not be able to dispute these transactions and get your money back unless you give me this information. And so they're holding access above these members, right? They are, in effect, it's a threat where you have to do this. You have to give me this information.
And if you do engage in a conversation with somebody that you're not quite sure if they are who they say they are, you've mentioned this on other podcasts and employee trainings before, this is a partnership. Your membership with Patelco is really a partnership, and the most effective partnerships are built on communication. Call us is what you've always said to our employees, our external folks. So if you do engage in a conversation like this and you're not sure, take their phone number. Let them know you'll call them back. Call us. Is that your best advice?
Absolutely. Disconnect the call and call the Patelco Member Contact Center. Call 800-358-8228. That is the safest way to make sure that your information is secure, your accounts are not being compromised, and to let them know that you were contacted by a Patelco impersonator. If this does happen to you, call in, let us know here at Patelco exactly what took place, okay? Because we want to protect you. This fraudster may or may not have information, so find out what they have and then contact us so we can help you.
Yeah, and I think what we're saying is we could be here all day talking about all the different scams that are out there. If you're unsure, I mean, you're not going to possibly remember all of these things. We're 3 episodes in now. You know, a couple months from now, we'll probably be talking about a new engineering scam. But if you're unsure, call. If you are going to pick up the phone, ask the questions, collect your questions, and contact us. We've also got a really great new resource in our Fraud Resource Center. What's that all about?
Okay, so our Fraud Resource Center on patelco.org/fraud is a fantastic section of the website that we have recently launched. It provides a lot of information on trends, scams, and how you can protect yourself from fraud, how to recover from fraud. And so we really encourage our members to take a look at this resource. We are here to help you.
Awesome. Tiffany, I'm so glad you were here with us today. Thanks for being here. And I'm thinking on it more now, and you're actually not like a pitcher. I think you're more of like the catcher position in this fraud game. You're calling the pitches. You have the best view of the playing field. So in this fraud game, you're our leader and in the catching position. I love that. So thank you for navigating this game for us. And we want to thank you for joining us. And that concludes today's episode of Small Talks for Big Change, where we help simplify financial topics to help with your financial wellness. We'll see you next time. Patelco Credit Union is insured by NCUA.